Hi, my name's Harry. Welcome to another episode of World of Fabrication. Today we're going to be looking at making or marking out and cutting a simple exercise to make a little tray. So I've got a couple of options that we're going to be using. Marking out, I'm going to use a back mark gauge. You could alternatively use a rule in conjunction with a square and a scribe. And in terms of cutting, we're going to be using a set of Tin Snips, Gilbo's, often they're known as in the trade, it's a brand name. And we're going to be using a rotary hand shear as well. This one happens to be a Makita. Same body as a Makita grinder, but with a different head on it. So what we're going to do first is, I'm just going to set a 40mm board around the outside of the piece of material. So I'm just going to come across like this. And just mark across the face of the material. So I've got 4 nice clear lines, like so. And then what we've got is an intersection around the corner now, so we've got this section here really is the area that we're going to look at cutting out. So this section across this bit here, we're going to cut these bits out on the corners of the piece of material. One thing you might want to take into consideration, depending on whether you're going to, could be spot welding it or whether you're going to MIG weld it, for instance, or TIG weld it. If you're going to spot weld, one thing you might want to do is you might want to put a small tab on the piece of material. So on the actual piece of material itself, before you cut it out, you might want to just give yourself a little tab on there like so. So basically as you cut along this face here, you cut this piece out with it, and then you just cut the corners off of that tab. So when we fold this whole face up on a piece of material, it folds the tab up as well, and it just means you've got something then to spot weld too. So options are, as I said, you've got the options of either using a pair of tin snips, quite simple really with the tin snips. One thing I would say is, I often, although I have fingers on the out, depending upon the thickness of the material, obviously sheet material, this is 1mm, I normally have 2 fingers on the outside and 1 on the inside. And the reason for that is because as I push back, I'll push back with my finger or my thumb, or you might have it like that, and your finger on the inside like so. So that way when you push back, as you push them together, you can actually push it apart. It's not sprung loaded, so it's just about keeping control. So if you've got a lot of material you can cut, or need to cut, then you're not then trying to pull it back apart, you've all got the control over one hand. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to cut in on this corner here, so I'm going to cut, and you'll always get one, what we call a waste edge on the piece of material. And that waste edge, as we cut through there, just cut up to that line there, you can see one piece of material comes up and one comes down. So when you're using something like a rotary hand shear as well, if you're cutting a thin piece of material and you're cutting the corner off a piece of material, you'll find it starts to curl away from you. And that's that waste on the material. So depending upon what face, slide up on that line there, depending on what face of the material we're going to be cutting, so you can see there, make sure it's into the corner, give that a little wiggle there, so you've got a nice clean cut, nice clean square cut on that corner there. Rotary hand shear, like I said, you've got the options. Using a rotary hand shear, what I will do is I'm just going to use rotary hand shear. Safety specs really should be worn. I've got a pair in my pocket. Using the rotary hand shear, because if you're taking small amounts off, because potentially although it's not a chip forming method, you could still potentially get small amounts of debris coming off of it. So we're going to follow our line up again. Come back the other way. Again, so we'll cut a corner out there, a little bit of a bend on the face of the material there, and what we can do, we'll just get a little hammer, give that little dress down before we fold that piece of material up. So, I'm just going to cut this, in fact I'll use the rotary hand shear for this one. What you can do is come straight across the face first. So we're going to put this little tab on. Come straight across the face first, and then just cut the little corners off after. So it wouldn't matter, for instance, if you want to use a set of Gilbo's or Tin Snips instead, line them up with your corner. And that way. So that corner out there. And Like so. As you can see there, we've got a tab there now that we've created. And that tab, when we fold up this face on a piece of material, so as an option, if you're going to spot weld, you can put a tab on the corner. The other option you've got is to use something like this, which is called a hand knife. And the idea of a hand knife, sometimes it's called a hand shear or a hand guillotine or a hand knife. And the blade comes down like so, and we're going to cut through the face of the material. What we're going to use, we've got a guide edge on this as well, so we can bring these down. We can set where we want to cut it to, and if you're a little bit unsure, we can always bring a little bit down first, line it up along the edge of the blade, like so, and it through, and then another way as well, so we can line it up, and again this time round I'm lining it up on the opposing side of the blade, like so. And then we've notched a corner out on the material that way. So there are 3 different options of ways of cutting sheet metal. There are others, but certainly basic hand tools aren't particularly expensive either. Okay, thank you.